Oh, it was up and it looked great.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we'll
Now
try that
it's,
again.
yeah,
I have three monitors. I feel like I'm on the enterprise, so I get a little confused. I apologize. So,
it sounds
my
perfect.
presentation.
You're all set now.
Okay, great. Well, hi, Leila Aman. I am actually one of you. So I'm a community development director, and I was invited today to talk a little bit about public-private partnerships. And so I'm going to focus on that. But it's really exciting listening to all of your stories as well, because the city I currently work for is very similar, has a lot of similarities to some of the problems that you're facing. So my hope today is to share some ideas with you, some of our successes and failures. They asked us to talk a little bit about our background, so I thought I'd do that in the context of projects that I've worked on. And I'm going to focus on kind of three sort of site-specific projects, programmatic projects we've done, and then more of an area plan, which is what I'm currently working on and frankly most excited about. So greetings, by the way, from Oregon. We are the home of the urban growth boundary. And the reason why I wanted to start with this is, like many of you actually went to all of your city's websites and see that all of you have comprehensive plans, which is great. It always blows my mind when I worked nationally, how many folks don't do that, because in Oregon, we sort of take it for granted. We passed Senate Bill 100 back in the 70s, which required every city to establish an urban growth boundary, which should have 20 years of growth within that boundary for both commercial employment and housing. And so that has, we're part of the greater metropolitan region. So Milwaukee is about 5 miles south of the city of Portland, but the region itself is 24 cities, 3 counties. And this is an important thing to note, is because the way that we do planning in Oregon is that we've always really thought of land use and transportation as two things that work together hand in hand. So our regional growth plan, which is what's up here on the screen, really shows that relationship, that we are planning in and around transportation, and then our investments are tied together. And so this regional blueprint provides a blueprint for all the other local cities to then take that and create their own comprehensive plans that reflect our local visions. And so so that's how we do things here in Oregon. And I think what oftentimes happens is, as planners, we plan, we come up with this wonderful comprehensive plan. We may even change our zoning requirements after we're finished with that, but then we kind of stop there. So it's really encouraging to hear so many of you have redevelopment agencies, or you're working on acquiring land, because oftentimes that's what we have to do when we're in emerging and smaller cities, even big cities, but just distressed and emerging districts often require a little bit of effort on the side of the public sector to kind of help advance the vision to reality. So what I've spent my career doing is, although I'm a trained planner, I have a background in real estate finance. And so I was advised when I was in graduate school by a really wonderful man who led the real estate program where I was at, and said, if you want to be a planner, you got to learn about real estate. And so I've spent the majority of my career kind of where that black arrow is, of how do you get to your comp plan and actually deliver the projects that you want to see on the ground. So I thought, because of the time, I wanted to kind of lead with sort of 3 main takeaways I'm hoping will be helpful to some of you. Some of this will just be repeating what you already know. But the public sector, so oftentimes we intervene, the public sector intervenes, it's because of public benefit. We're trying to leverage public benefit. So that's a philosophy that I use in everything that I do, as I try to implement things that my mayor is really excited about, is what is the public benefit that we're getting out of any investment that we make, and making sure that that's commensurate with the amount of resources we're putting into it. I think the second thing is considering the market context. We often don't do this. We get super aspirational, which is wonderful. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant of what the market really trends are, and setting goals and timelines that are both flexible and adaptable to changes, because we get those a lot, as we've all experienced. And then also allows us to be nimble if something different comes up. But we're able to set a framework. And then finally, I think leveraging what already exists. You guys all have wonderful main streets and downtowns. It's really wonderful to hear that you know that, and you're trying to figure out ways to leverage it. But I'll give an example later about how even a storm pipe can be a way to help advance the goals that you have in your downtown. So just starting with, I started my career out in the private sector, worked for several years for Fregonesi Associates, which was a regional planning firm, but we did most station area planning. We also did joint development work as well. And I ended up going back there and actually as a principal and partner and leading the firm's work for several years. But to the consultants here on the team, I admire the fact, especially Trinity, the amount of travel that you do, but it killed me. I had a young daughter. So I opted to go back to the public sector. But I did spend the beginning parts of my career at Metro in the transit-oriented development program. And why I wanted to bring up this example is because this really, I think, sets a very clear connection between public benefit and then leveraging land in order to realize the vision that you have. So I showed you that regional concept we had. Our job, we had a small group of folks went out, was to provide technical assistance to local jurisdictions that maybe didn't have folks with the kind of background that our team brought, which is really understanding how to connect plans to implementation. And so that was the goal, was to help move these cities to grow up and not out into our farm and forest lands. And that's sort of the philosophy that we approached this with. So we partnered with local jurisdictions. So Metro, if you don't know, it's a regional government. So we actually have home rule authority over land use, but we didn't use it. We delegate that down to the local jurisdictions because we feel like the local jurisdictions know what they're doing more than we did. But the goal was to implement that growth concept and to increase transit ridership. And the intent of the program was kind of threefold. And I think these are lessons that I've applied throughout my career, which is we're trying to get developers. So we're trying to get people who understand the kind of development that we're trying to do in places that maybe don't have it, which leads to things like acceptance of new development forms. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about what we're doing in Milwaukee. And then finally, one of the biggest barriers that we often face too is the financial institutions don't lend if there's no comparables. And so part of what our program was intending to do is to work with this is actually in Milwaukee. So this was 14 years ago that we did this project. This kind of development was crazy town to people back then. So part of what we did is we worked with the community. We came up with a design that people were comfortable with. And we pushed them a little bit too, to say, you can't just stick with what's comfortable. You actually got to go a little further if we're intending to do this kind of grow up, not out. And so that was the whole intent of this program. And then when I think about return on investment, I think about it in the context of public benefit. Behind the scenes, I'm making sure that whatever we're asking of the developer and the development team is not so far beyond that it pushes their pro forma into the ground and then you can't actually do anything. So it's sort of this dance that we have to do in the public sector to say, we want all these things. We want to find ways to support and incentivize that to catalyze the market so that it starts delivering it on its own. So in that sense, when we look at this, we had a dying downtown. This site was actually the location of a grocery store, which we are still, like many of you, trying to get back into our downtown. The funeral home across the street was about to buy this property. And I won't use the pun of like, it was really going to kill our downtown, but it kind of was getting close. So we acquired the property. The city did jointly with Metro and the state, and then ultimately through a very complicated public-private partnership came up with this project, which has been wildly successful on the housing side of it, not so much on the retail side of it. We just filled the last retail space last year, 14 years after the project was built. I could spend a whole session talking about retail shells in emerging districts, but the ROI we got on this was we got 97 units. 64 of those are affordable to people at 60 and 30% of area median income. And then we also combined it with ownership homes. There's a wait list on every rental property in this unit in this facility. And it's really pretty fantastic. It also leveraged, the big part of what we were trying to do is leverage downtowns. And I see I've already gone through 10 minutes. So I'll be quick and I'll just jump to, we had big projects as well. So urban renewal in bigger districts can tend to be something that folks want to do. And that is actually, it's a great way to do it. But there's such a long list of things, and oftentimes these things happen and they take so long that the community's kind of forgotten why we were doing this in the first place. But the thing we did in this that I think is most interesting is that we really focused on the businesses and supporting those businesses. We did master lease programs. We helped buy reduced rents for folks, and we invested in tenant improvements to help create a commercial affordability program to keep local businesses and women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses in that area. Because once you start to make an area succeed, you got to find a way to remedy that. And we did that also through housing. I think I should probably cede my time here in about 30 seconds so that we can keep moving on. But just to give you a sense of what we've been doing in South Downtown, we developed, so this is in Milwaukee where I am now, very consistent with what many of you are working on. We developed a concept plan. Our light rail opened in 2015. We updated our zoning code. We've done it again after we've had some development. We have a key opportunity site we're working on. We've used interim uses. We have a food cart pod on some of our funky land that we owned. Cities, this is a great way to do it. Is it a weird piece of land? Is it really an opportunity for cities? Because most times private developers don't want to deal with that. And it's worked. We're starting to make huge investments. We got our first private investment. It was a $30 million project for our city. It's huge. And that went in and just opened up right before COVID. So that was interesting. We also land bank, we invested a whole lot in infrastructure in advance. So we had to replace a storm pipe at the same time that new development was coming in. And so we were able to partner with them to redo all the streets. We moved stuff up in our capital improvement plan. That's one thing, just as mayors, is you get the opportunity to, and especially of small towns, that you can find ways to leverage investments that you are already planning to do to help get private investment in your downtown. So sorry, I thought I would go a lot quicker than this, but just a couple of parting thoughts of things that we're thinking about in terms of how design could potentially help us in terms of COVID is being creative about how we support small business. So we really had to help repurpose public space so that we can be flexible about how businesses operate. And then I think we're going to see a lot of people, especially living in these urban environments, expecting public spaces to be extension of their home. And so how do we design better? And then to the point some of the other mayors made about working from home, we're about to embark on a massive update to our single family zones. It's related to House Bill 2001. I encourage you to check it out. But basically the state of Oregon is now, in our comp plan, which we just updated, is supportive of this, is that we need to revisit zoning for single dwellings and allow for duplexes in every single family zone, triplexes, fourplexes, garden apartments, and cottage clusters. So that's going to be a major shift in terms of housing development, but will help us address some of our extremely painful housing needs. So with that, I will stop talking. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Leila. That was jam-packed with information, and I've asked the resource team to really do the impossible. Each one of these folks are sort of keynote presentation themselves, so we could give them 45 minutes. So I've asked you to do something really hard, and I thank you for doing it. But I just we'll go on to the next one. But just to say, that